So I just watched this movie from 1984 titled Threads, which I hadn't even heard of until just recently. But it's about the effects that come from a nuclear attack on an urban population in Sheffield, England. And I'm just going to start off right off the bat. It's got a recommended for mature audiences on it, and there's good reason for it. This movie is gruesome. It surprised me for something of its age to be that grim. So if you're somebody that's sensitive to that kind of thing and can't stomach stuff, nastier things, then just give this a miss because it's going to be a little too much for you. But that's one thing that I really liked about it was just how realistic it was. You know, so many post-apocalyptic movies and TV shows just make it out like, oh, you know, this event is just a backdrop for human drama and love triangles to form and all this stuff. And okay, that's entertaining, and there's things you can take away from shows and movies like that. But I think something ultra realistic and gritty like this can teach you a lot more, really open your eyes to things. So this originally it was put on by the BBC, and it originally aired in the UK, tens of millions of viewers in September 1984. And then 4 months later, it aired in the US. And at the time, it was actually the most watched basic cable program in television history up until that point. So I'm actually surprised that something like this would be put on TV like that. Definitely wouldn't happen today. But it was so good because the realism of it showed everything, not just the attack, but then the aftermath too. And I had remembered, I had read, this is a book I really like, Nuclear War Survival Skills by Kress and Kearney. And this one was written by an expert. You know, whenever you always hear everybody speculates about what they think nuclear war would be like on the internet and whatever, but this is a true expert. It was his job for 20 years to study the effects of nuclear radiation and then develop civil defense plans and things like that. So even in my own experience, I worked for 17 years at a nuclear power plant. And what I actually saw there, what really happens, and how nuclear power really works is way different from what the general public, speculates about. So it's good reading from a true expert on the subject. And so many things he mentioned in the book were kind of portrayed in the movie as well. So I think they really did their homework when they decided to put this on. So it's set in Sheffield, England, like I said, which at the time was the fourth largest city in Britain and a major industrial hub, especially of producing steel. So it's a realistic target in a war like that. So everybody's going on with their normal lives in the city. And you hear, like, as they're walking around, you can hear television programs where newscasters are discussing like things going on. Basically, there was problems going on in Iran where the U.S. and the Soviet Union at the time were having arguments about involvement of both sides in the Iran region. And it's so interesting that here it is 40 years later, and we got the same big belligerent countries fighting their proxy wars in the same exact area. Uh, but that's what it was. And then eventually it comes to a point where the two sides can't come to an agreement, and bombs start flying everywhere, involving all countries that were participating in the different actions. So this nuke is dropped right on Sheffield. And contrary to what people believe, it's complete devastation, but there are actually some survivors even at ground zero. it discussed that in the book here, because when the bombs were dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, there was people as close as 100 yards to ground zero that still managed to survive because of the design of their home, or happened to be in a basement location or something like that. But that's just the beginning of the movie. Once the bombs drop, you have survivors, and it shows the aftermath of radiation poisoning that people receive, and the things they go through. And that's what I'm talking about with the gruesomeness. Like, it really shows the people getting sick and going through the different stages of radiation sickness. So, eye-opening. And I like that it didn't just stop there either. It went further on into subsequent years, what would happen with the characters. So, like, it was, the bombs had dropped, I think, in May. So, like, spring planting had already been done. But when the bombs happened, it would cause enough debris to go up into the atmosphere that it would actually, like, block out a lot of the sun's rays, and totally change our environment. And it said that it'd possibly drop the temperature in most places by as much as like 45 degrees Fahrenheit, which, if you think about that, imagine it being summer, what your average summer temperatures are, and subtract 45 degrees from it. That's extremely drastic. So that first year, almost none of the crops that had been planted actually ripened. So of course it went into, people just going into starvation mode without any food being produced. And fascinating. And even then, in the following year, after them going through this extreme cold for a year, that was totally unexpected. The following year, after all of that dust had kind of settled in that, well, now, because of all the damage that had been done to our atmosphere, it was no longer as effective as at filtering out like ultraviolet rays from the sun in that. So it would actually be, in that following year, way hotter than people are accustomed to. And because of those sun rays coming through, your skin and eyes especially would become very susceptible. So it'd be very common to see people have like cataracts and skin cancer and things. So it just had me thinking, like, wow, even if you were somebody who managed to survive the initial effects of the blast, here for years afterwards, you got to deal with all these environmental effects that would keep affecting you and changing the world. So even if you are someone who happens to live out somewhere like out here, I'm never going to get a bomb dropped on my head. It's just nothing of value out here. But it would change the environment enough that it would affect every last one of us on this planet. So don't think that you're safe because you're in a country that's not involved in World War III or any of the different squabbles going on in the world, because it's everywhere. It doesn't just need to be between the US and Russia or China. I mean, think of right now, India and Pakistan have nukes pointed right at each other, and both are ready to rock and roll. Something can kick off there, and it would affect every last one of us. When the Soviet Union dissolved, all the nuclear weapons they had ended up being kind of smuggled away and are gone, and no one was able to track them. Nobody to this day knows where all those nukes are. And they're still out there. I mean, somebody has them. It isn't something you just misplace and like, oh, got lost in a basement somewhere. No, somebody has it, and they're not willing to give them up. So anybody can land an attack like this if they have the ability to deliver it, and the will to want to do so. So it's pretty terrifying. I think it's worth it for us to watch realistic portrayals like this, because it's really so eye-opening to realize that, man, even if there's a low chance of nuclear warfare happening, if there's any chance, it would be so life-changing that it is worth at least considering the possibility and start in your head preparing for it. Because I know for me, just watching this started getting the hamster spinning on my wheel of like, okay, well, I hadn't considered this and that and whatever, and maybe I should do this and start just having some knowledge of what's possible is a good start, you know, and then finding other valuable information to start doing further research on can help you out, you know. We're never going to change how humans act. We're never going to be able to stop. If the people running the world want to start bombing people, they're going to do it, and there's nothing we're ever going to be able to do about that. But we ourselves can prepare the best we can and get our own families ready, at least. And also it's good from like a political perspective, because it really disturbs me that today so many people just talk about going to war and bombing people like it's no big deal. You know, you hear that all the time. Oh, we should just go bomb that crap whole country, or oh, the Middle East desert, we should just drop a nuke on them and turn it into a sheet of glass. And you know, when people say things like that, it really just shows how ignorant they are to the effects it would have on all of us if something like that were to go down. You know, we got to stop beating the war drums. And when we hear politicians doing it, we got to speak out against it. You know, it doesn't, it benefits a few people. The bankers, which finance it, both sides, the military industrial complex contractors, you know, they love war, and the politicians themselves all profit from this. All the rest of us doesn't do us any good. It just costs us money to produce all this extra stuff that's unneeded. And, you know, of course, it's not good when we get bombed. And if we as individuals can just take our own responsibility for our own lives and try to prepare for a worst case scenario like that just a little bit. I mean, don't go and watch a movie like this and then go and panic like, oh my God, I got to go build a nuclear shelter. No, just a little bit each day. Say, what can I do to be better prepared today? What more can I learn and educate myself on? What knowledge and skills would benefit me to have? I don't know what it is, but this box just smells like celery for some reason. Weird.